Hello, my name is Cynthia Peters. I'm the editor of The Change Agent, published by the New England Literacy Resource Center at World Education. And today I want to share a short video with you to describe how you might use some resources in the current issue. Mainly for this one, I want to focus on this article called Essential Workers, Pay Them, Protect Them, Empower Them. And in addition to this article, there's another video that you can watch, and I have the text of some of that video that I also can share with you. And then finally, a wonderful math activity written by Eric Appleton, who is a math professional developer out of CUNY, which came about because as I was working on editing this article and going back and forth with the writer, a lot of math concepts were coming up. And I spoke with some of my friends who do math curriculum development, and we got to talking about the relationship between some really important math concepts and being able to grapple with concepts of equity and inequity. So in this article, the author is saying basically that there's an inequitable distribution of work being done by people of color and women when it comes to essential work. Frontline workers, essential workers, the ones who had to show up at jobs during COVID, were disproportionately people of color and women. And they were also disproportionately affected by COVID. And so this brings up health disparities, work disparities, inequities at work, and inequities in carrying the load of doing essential work during COVID. And in the article, in the before you read activities and in the after you read activities, we really explore the vocabulary, the words like undervalued, overrepresented, proportionate, disproportionate, fair share, those kinds of words. We grapple with those words and give you a chance to grapple with those words with your students as you read. Then there is also, just as an aside, there is a yellow box down there at the bottom, which explores something in the state of New York called the HEROES Act, which many community-based organizations and labor unions fought for. And I wanted to give people a chance to notice that even though these inequities exist, people fight back against these inequities, and they actually won. This HEROES Act was passed last spring, and it guarantees some rights for people doing essential work. So that's something you can explore as a tangent, which helps explain, has a whole social studies element to it, understanding how government works, understanding how civics works, and how ordinary people can make change. But back to the math concepts of proportion. One more tangent. There is also this really great video that you can find at the protectnewyorkheroes.org website. And what I took was some screen grabs from the video and some text from the video, and it's set up as a letter, Dear New York, and it's from essential workers asking New York, basically stating, we took care of you during the pandemic, will you take care of us? So that is a great video to share with your students. I think it's just about 1 minute long. You could read the text first to kind of lay the groundwork and then watch the video. Now, to the math questions. So proportion is so important for talking about equity, right? Because a lot of the way inequity shows up is that people of color are underrepresented or overrepresented in certain ways. Women are similarly under or overrepresented in certain jobs. So Eric very skillfully walks you through a way to start talking about proportion. He starts out with a quiz where he gets you to think about what percentage of the population do you think different races are? And then the answers to that are below. Then he has some vocabulary there for thinking about proportion. So you can look at different ways of stating the same kind of concepts. Let's make the screen a little larger. And then we had all this amazing data from New York City about the role of frontline workers and the racial and ethnic makeup of frontline workers. So in order to think about whether people of color are disproportionately represented in frontline work in New York City, you first need to know what the racial and ethnic breakdown of the population is in New York City. So he offers that here. And then he shows the different kinds of essential jobs and how races are represented in those jobs. So you can explore this with your students and see which races are over or underrepresented in which kinds of jobs. Then he looks at it by sex. So this is really some really interesting math to look at, and including what I think is one of the fascinating things about it is you can see that, say building and cleaning services, that women are overrepresented by a small margin, a tiny margin in building and cleaning services, but it's also doesn't amount to that many jobs. However, when you look at healthcare, you see women do 75% of that work, and that's hundreds of thousands of jobs. So it's even bigger than you think. And then with childcare, it's 81% now, but it's 81% of a somewhat smaller number than healthcare. So it just gives you a chance to kind of wrestle with this, and you can look at those numbers there. It's hard to visualize, but then he gives you a way to visualize it too with this next bar graph. So it's pretty dramatic. You can see how women are just way overrepresented in the frontline work in New York City. That is my video about looking at proportion. I hope you can try that out with your students. I'd love to get any feedback on how it goes. Thank you so much for your work out there.